session. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the informational session to anyone interested in learning more about ASAE's highest awards bestowed on an individual member. On today's informational session, you will hear from me, DJ Johnson, the chair of the 2022 Individual Honors Committee, and I'm joined in leadership by my vice chair of the committee, who is also a past Individual Honors recipient. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to the group.
Absolutely. Thank you, DJ. I am Rhea Steele, and I'm the Chief of Staff with the School Nutrition Association.
Thanks, Rhea. And then also joining us today are two additional award recipients. If you all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves to the group as well.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Don D.
And hi, everybody. Arlene Pietranton.
Thank you both for joining us today. So the awards program honors individual ASAE members who have shown exceptional leadership in the association community. Recipients should also demonstrate exemplary support and engagement within ASAE, the larger association community, and their own communities in the wider world. The awards program started in 1960 with the Key Award recognizing chief staff executives who demonstrated exceptional leadership. The program expanded to include two additional categories: the Professional Performance Award, recognizing non-CEO association executives who have demonstrated exceptional leadership, and the Academy of Leaders Award, recognizing an individual serving as an industry partner or consultant to the association community. Each year, the applications are reviewed and scored and discussed by a diverse panel of ASAE members, including association executives, both at the CEO and non-CEO level, as well as consultants and industry partners. Judge applications are accepted through an open call about a month before the awards open. The chair, vice chair, and immediate past chair review the applications with staff input to select the panel. Judges are appointed to a 3-year term with about a third to half of the judges rotating off each year. I'm very proud of how the efforts of the past awards chairs have led to very intentional and inclusive selections of judges to ensure that the panel includes a mix of ASAE members with long and medium tenures from large and small associations, both professional and trade, as well as consultants and industry partners, as well as a variety of other demographics. I'd like to offer gratitude to the judges chosen for this year, which includes some past recipients, as well as some who are new to the program to provide fresh perspectives. So let's take some time to review the required information for the application. So candidates can be nominated or can apply directly. So the nomination period for this year closed on April 15th, but people can still self-nominate. The great thing about the awards portal that we use is that it syncs directly with ASAE's AMS. So all information from your membership profile on ASAE's main website automatically transfers over, including contact and demographic information. Applicants are also asked to upload a current resume, as well as additional documentation to demonstrate their contributions and leadership, which we'll review later in this program. All applicants are vetted by staff to make sure they meet the eligibility requirements. So in terms of eligibility, you must currently be employed full-time in the role that the award recognizes. So CEO for the Key Award, non-CEO association executive for the Professional Practice Award, and an industry partner or consultant for the Academy of Leaders. You must also have served in the role for 5 years cumulatively across your career. Something this slide doesn't show is that you also must have been an ASAE member for at least 5 years. And ASAE board members and individual honors committee members are prohibited from being nominated for up to 2 years after their volunteer leadership term ends. The application will also ask for some details about the applicant's organization. So applicants will be asked to list and upload optional backup documents to demonstrate their leadership and impact in 4 main areas. So the first is engagement within ASAE. The application and judging rubric allows for contributions in many ways and levels, from service on a volunteer group to thought leadership as a speaker or through publications or research, as well as being honored or recognized in other ASAE recognition or leadership programs. Now, since the award is intended to recognize leadership within ASAE, this category is weighted by 0.25 points over the other evaluation criteria. The second area of evaluation is service to the association management industry through the work achieved in the role being recognized in that category. So this typically focuses on projects, initiatives, and the impact the individual has had on their organization directly and or the other organizations or clients they partner with or serve. So how has the applicant demonstrated that they made the association management industry and the applicant's own organizations better? Applicants are also asked to demonstrate how they have demonstrated exceptional leadership in other professions or industries, or even in their larger communities outside of their job role. Now, these could include volunteering for other organizations or entities that fall outside their main scope of work, as well as in their larger community. The third area of evaluation is the candidate's commitment to diversity and inclusion. ASAE has a strong diversity and inclusion statement. For ASAE and many other associations, D&I is both a business principle and practice. Applicants should demonstrate how they have demonstrated a commitment to diversity and inclusion personally, professionally, and or across the organizations they serve. As with the other criteria, there are many different ways that applicants can demonstrate their commitment. And new this year, applicants will also be asked to include a personal summary statement about their motivations, value, or lessons they've learned in their role as a CEO, a non-CEO association executive, or an industry partner consultant. Now, applicants are also allowed to share additional information that they would like the awards committee to consider that might fall outside of the other evaluation criteria. So before we get to talking to our panel, there's some very important dates to keep in mind. Anyone who has been nominated or who wants to apply has until the end of the day on Monday, May 30th to apply. The awards committee will then begin to review, score, and have selection discussions with recipients notified and then announced in a press release in June. And each recipient will be allowed to make remarks from the main stage at ASAE's annual meeting. So in each of the criteria that we previously discussed in this session, so service to ASAE, service to the association profession, service to other professions and communities outside of their role, demonstrated commitment to DEI, as well as their summary statement, will be evaluated through a rubric. So judges are given a rubric so that they can be consistent and transparent with each other as they go through judging deliberations. All the scored rubrics are based on a 6-point scale. And this year, the task force worked to ensure that there are many pathways to reach a 6 and that it's not limited to a few types of activities. So for example, to reach a 6 in the ASAE leadership category, it is not just that you have to have served on the board. It's really about the impact that you've had across the activities that you have done across your service to ASAE. So now we'd like to let you hear from some of our past recipients. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, but if you have any direct questions, please feel free to submit those in the chat. And as time allows, we will try to get to all of your questions. All right, so first, and Rhea, since you are a past recipient as well, and congratulations to all of you on your past honor. So a question that we often receive is, how do I know when I've reached a point in my career to apply for these awards? Because one of the things that we do want to emphasize during this program is this is not an end of career achievement award. And I know even amongst our panelists today, I know Arlene, you are now retired, and congratulations on that, by the way. And Don and Rhea are obviously still practicing within associations. But if you don't mind, why don't we start with Arlene, then go to Don, and then go to Rhea. So just how did you decide that you'd reached a point in your career where you wanted to apply or be nominated for this award? And let's start with Arlene.
Oh, thanks, DJ. And thanks for offering this session. I don't remember anything like this being available back in the year when I was a nominee. So I think it's a great offering. Thank you for doing it. I think I was really fortunate because I had a couple of colleagues who I thought knew me well, who encouraged me. One of those individuals nominated me, and a couple of other folks had said, is this something you've ever thought of pursuing? So that made me think about that possibility. So it was really colleagues who were kind enough to tap me on the shoulder and say, is this something that you've given thought to? So I feel really grateful in that regard. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to really look around us and think about who are the people we see who are contributing in ways that we think are worthy of recognition.
Thanks for that, Arlene. Don, did you have a similar experience, or what was it that kind of triggered you to be nominated or to apply for the Academy of Leaders?
Thank you, DJ, for the question. And I certainly share a little bit of Arlene's experience, and from the perspective of being fortunate to have several people both nominate and encourage. But and I think that it does encourage you to take a pause and reflect on, well, is this really something that makes sense? Because you kind of, well, at least for myself, you're focused. I've always just been focused on the things that are important, whether it's mission and my values and things that we do. But I think that a bigger question you ask, because sometimes, and if you're in a position, I think, where you are involved in a lot of different areas, and you you have colleagues who recognize that, that's certainly a path that hopefully many of the candidates, I'm sure many of the candidates that have past winners have been in that situation. But I think as well, though, I think the question is a good question in terms of, well, how do I know that I'm ready if I do self-nominate myself? And I think that's always a good question, because it's one of those things where it's almost a little bit like the question of what do you want to do when you grow up, right? You never know what you really want to do, at least for me, and I think many people that I've gotten to know. But it is a moment of an inflection point where you take stock of, say, what have I done in this period, however you define that period, if it's the first few years after school, or the first few years in a position. And it's generally not the first 2 or 3 years in a new job, but it's certainly one where you kind of have a chance to sit back and look and say, hey, we've been able to accomplish these things. These are some of the goals. And then I think when you get to that kind of an inflection point, it's really where somebody either says, hey, take a look at this, or it's also good just to look at yourself and say, what have I learned out of this experience? What can I transfer from this experience? And what has it prepared me for? And what, probably most importantly, what motivates me? What am I interested in doing? And I think that when you kind of go through that process of that inflection point, it's a good, healthy check. Just a good check-in on yourself.
Thanks for those insights, Don. And I think it's really important to also recognize that as ASAE has been going through its own assessments and evaluations in relation to equity, this program used to have a requirement that you had to have been a member for 10 years or so. And one of the things that was determined was that was having the unintentional impact of making some people who might have had that impact within their career on ASAE, on their larger communities, on the organizations that they're in earlier than 10 years, but then seeing that kind of gave it that weight. So one of the things that we've been really happy to see is that the diversity of applicants has greatly increased since that change was made. And while we still want to make sure that people have served within a role for at least 5 years cumulatively, as I've said, so that they really have had that chance to make an impact. And we do know that within our industry, sometimes there is a lot of jumping. You may start out in one area and then you may jump over and then you may come back. So that's kind of how we ended up planning for that. And so I think your words really spoke, kind of to the efforts and the impact that ASAE has been doing behind the scenes to make this award more equitable. And Rhea, I'm really interested to hear, did you have a similar experience in terms of nomination or self-nomination?
So I did, and I think what's important to call out is that the self-nomination process is also fairly new to the awards, right? So I think that what's interesting is the first time I was nominated for the award, I actually chose not to apply because I didn't think I was ready to apply. And so I did a lot of thinking in the intervening year about, what is it that would make me feel ready? What do I feel like I need to continue adding to my portfolio, for lack of a better term, to make sure that I'm presenting myself as one of the best candidates to the awards committee. And a couple of things that I was thinking about related to that specifically are, one, am I able to actually speak to the impact that I have had, whether it's in my organization, whether it's through the DEI efforts I've been involved in, whether it's through the community, and do I, to myself, understand the impact that I have had in my career in those areas? And, only by going through that self-reflection process, Dawn, to what you were talking about, and Arlene, what you mentioned, do I really start to be able to speak to others about what I've done? And really understanding where I did have impact and where I maybe wasn't having impact and needed to take a little bit more time to have impact in my career. I think the other thing was really reflecting on how I give my time and energy to ASAE. One of the things that is sort of implicitly understood about this award is that it's an ASAE award, right? So really the focus is on how are we contributing to the association community? How are we contributing to ASAE? How are we contributing to our peers? How are we helping to bring others into this very strong community that we have? And has been part of my reflection for a number of years now, is making sure that I'm thoughtful in how I bring myself forward into ASAE, bring others forward with me. How am I positively impacting ASAE in our community? And I can't stress that enough, that, and DJ, as you mentioned, that's not necessarily about being on the ASAE board directors for all of us, right? Some of us choose a different path and a different way of supporting the association. And so I think for me, it was really centering myself and really coming to a better understanding of how I contribute, how I want to be contributing, and bringing that forward into what I'm putting in front of the selection committee.
Thanks for that, Rhea.
Yeah. So I actually have a question for our panelists too. One of the things I'd be interested from both of you is, as you were thinking about what you were going to put forward in front of the panel, how was it that you went about crafting your story and communicating what you did in each of those areas to a group of people that likely didn't know you, or maybe one or two of them knew you, but you're presenting your information to a panel that may not have direct experience working with you. Don?
Well, thank you. That is certainly a very appropriate question and an important one for everybody, because it really speaks to the heart of this moment of reflection, because I think that's what this is really a moment of reflection. But like any time that, as you all have gone through your own careers, and when you've applied for a job, or you've put your name in the hat for something, whether it was to help a project, and you kind of put a resume together to kind of part of a bibliography of supporting something, you always have to tailor to your audience, right? Because this is an audience that is looking and, and certainly wanting to bring forward the best possible candidate that exemplifies the values that are being articulated in that particular award. So number one, understanding the context of that award. Why is that so? And in the case of whether it's a key award or I can speak to the Academy of Leaders, people are have a different lens there, and you have to keep that in mind. Number one, the award, the basis of the award. But secondly, I think to your question, I don't think I knew how many people were involved in judging, and I don't think I was aware of a rubric per se at that time. But I do think you look at what is it that in anything, it's part of telling a story, and part of telling a story is establishing you have a very brief moment to tell your story. So you have to sit there and establish who you are in your application right up front, what distinguishes you right up front, and then what are the key components in each one of the different questions that is being asked. And inside of those key questions, I think you have to be able to also get inside of how do you tell a story. And telling a story is being able to get to the heart of the character of you as a person. So people understand who you are in a very short period of time, just like a resume. They have to be able to understand who you are very quickly and succinctly. Then they also need to understand, well, beyond who you are and the role that you are, the second thing you really need to do is be able to establish, well, what are the key challenges in this role? Because that's the piece that is going to sit there and say, okay, did you make a difference here, and why? And what was your goals? I mean, your goals may be very, you have some personal goals. And I think that overall sense of who you are and what's important to you, your values and your principles kind of is right up front. And then how you tell that story in each one of those questions, it may be told very differently depending on the nature of the question. So really understanding your audience and understanding and establishing who you are as a person right up front, and what your values and what motivates you. And then whatever the different questions are is really telling the story inside of that. That's just a way of, and I say this in the context of ASAE, but I think that's how you approach when you're applying for a job, or you're applying and supporting a project, and then you're putting your bibliography out there.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Arlene? How did you approach telling your story to a group you'd never met?
Well, this is an interesting conversation among the three of us here. First of all, I would underscore the comments of, engaging in really deep, honest self-reflection. So underscore that part. Don's point about really focusing on the question, respecting and answering the question. So as part of my self-reflection, I really tried to be thoughtful about the nature of my contributions and impact. And, was it something I could say I did? Was it something I could say I fostered? Was it something I could say I championed? So I really tried to think, to Don's point, through a variety of different lenses to be honest as I thought about what was the nature of the contributions, because they weren't all the same, right? And to acknowledge that in many, many cases, the things that I hope I contributed to or fostered or helped to bring about really involved the input and the contributions of many additional people besides myself. And then just a technical piece, as I wrote my answers, I found that for me, the way that I felt most comfortable conveying that information was perhaps a lead-in sentence, but I used a lot of bullets because I wanted to be specific, and I didn't want to talk in broad terms. I really wanted to offer specificity about the things that I felt I could bring to the table and answer to the questions. So those are some of the things that I kept in mind as, and then another important thing, and I know there wasn't a prohibition about this the year that I was a nominee. I hope there still isn't. I asked a person who knows me really well, who has worked closely with me, to read what I wrote. And I knew they would be honest. And I said, does this ring true? You know me. Is this the person you know? You need to be brutally honest. Is there anything in here that isn't an accurate thing to say? And is there anything missing from here that you think is really important for me to share?
I think those are really great comments. And something, as I was reviewing all of your past applications, that really rang true is to tie all of the comments together is you really did tell a story in a specific way. You didn't just assume if I list out the volunteer groups that I've worked on at ASAE that people know what that means, what that group has done. You were specific in some cases about what projects you worked on directly, what impacts the group had that you were proud of, as well as, I know, Don, you also used a lot of bullets as well, but you used bullets to educate us about the dog rescue nonprofit that you had put together in your spare time outside of work, and I had wondered if that was a callback to your wallpaper in the background there that really spoke to that. But and it was honestly enjoyable as a judge to get to read the stories from all of you. Like it was, I remember leaving those sessions thinking, I honestly might have thought, wow, what am I doing with my life? But it was inspirational in terms of what you could do. And that's what, I think we all hope any awards program will do, that it will add to, that it will inspire people, will motivate other people to achieve, and then it will really show the power that an organization can bring, through its members and through convening. Rhea, did you want to answer the question yourself as well?
No, I mean, I think the only thing I would add is really going back to what you and Arlene just mentioned, is that, the big long list of all of your volunteer activities that sits in your resume, right? The importance of really considering impact and where you're having impact and telling that story to the committee, I really think is the most important. Anybody who's applying for the commission, or sorry, the award to do.
Yes, Rhea's serving on multiple groups, the eternal ever-serving volunteer. Well, I think this has been great content for this program. Maybe just to ask everyone for a final thought in terms of, maybe what's one tip or thing that has not come up during this session today that you would encourage people to think about as they apply. And why don't we go in reverse order this time? So Rhea, we're going to start with you. Don, we'll go to you next, and then we will end with Arlene.
Yeah, well, I think what I would say is that take the plunge. If you feel like you've been contributing to your organization, your community, ASAE, apply for the award. Don't say to yourself that I don't belong there. And I'm certain multiple people have applied multiple times. You may not get it on the first time around, but I definitely would say go through the process of applying.
All right, next, Don.
Okay, great. I certainly would echo, taking a plunge there. I think that a couple of things that I've been able to, I think, learn, I guess maybe reflect on is that, particularly I think in the association world, I've been both in the government side and the nonprofit side, as well as the commercial side. But I think there's two things that are important that I think that will help frame this is really the value of execution in the association world is probably even more important than in the commercial world. In the commercial world, we can specialize in a lot of different things. And then even in the association world, we can specialize. But to say at the end of the day, we have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of passion around what we do. But at the end of the day, you also have to execute whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's, whether you're in membership, whether you're in a advocacy role or a marketing role. And that execution can come in a lot of different ways, depending on where you are at the level and the role that you're playing. And I think as you reflect on that in your body of work that you do, I think that's something that will help tell your story, is because that puts a first person perspective around the key points that you're trying to anchor. So number one, that ability to understand and execute, and how that permeates your values. I think the second thing is really about education. I think if there's anything about the association world that I've learned is that education is such an important part of what we do, because many of the things that we do beyond the human services side of execution is really our ability to educate both the industry and the sector. And I think the combination of execution and education really are the heart of what I think the application does for you, is to sit there and be able to tell the story about your passion, what's important to you, and how you will go about accomplishing those things. And then always going back to your point, I think, DJ, you summarized it very well there earlier, is be able to tie the points together and summarize. We oftentimes tend to put out our bullets and then frame it around that question, but then you got to go back and put it in a context. And I think that summary is so important, because you're dealing with an audience of whatever, 10 to 15 people. And you've just spent a lot of energy telling a story, each one of those particular frames and questions. Come back and summarize it. And I think you guys have added questions in there to give people that chance, not just to sit there and answer a specific question, but to sit there and say, here's what this all means. And both in the context of your own candidacy, but more importantly, this is the value that I think this will help both, say, ASAE as well as others by being in a position to be considered for this award.
Thanks for that, Don. And all right, Arlene, take us home.
Well, I think we've at least nuanced on these 2 points that I would underscore, DJ. One is, take this, if you are going to apply, or if you're nominated and you decide to pursue, I would say take it seriously. So be reflective and really spend some time thinking deeply about the nature of your participation, your contributions, your impact, and be honest about how you describe it. I think it's not a time to embellish. It's not a time to add hyperbole. It's a time for honest reflection. And as you've said several times, tell the story and tell it accurately, because that's really important, as opposed to painting a picture that doesn't hold up. People see through that pretty quickly.
That's an excellent point. And it actually made me reflect on, I think there was one year where it seemed apparent from the materials that I think maybe someone's staff was trying to nominate someone and to do it as a surprise, which we can understand, really good intent there, but everything was written like kind of like a public relations campaign kind of thing. There was a lot of hyperbole without a lot of specificity, and it was really missing that personal element, where I think I remember as I was reading it, I thought, I don't really feel like I know who this applicant is or the impact that they have. I just know these accolades and accomplishments. And so if there is anyone that's watching this and you're thinking about trying to nominate or apply on someone else's behalf, I would really encourage you to consider switching stream and go to the person and say, we think that you're great and we want you to be competitive. And maybe we've started and taken a first attempt at filling out a lot of the questions that are on there. And now we need you to help us provide context, just because I think it's really difficult for someone from the outside to help provide that context for someone as an individual. Now, I think Arlene's suggestion of having someone who knows you well read through it and to say, look, if you didn't know anything about me, does this do a good job at encapsulating everything that I stand for and that I've accomplished? I think that's a great step to do, but trying to do this on someone else's behalf, I think could be difficult. All right, well, that is going to bring us to the end of today's program. So just as a reminder that you can find the link to the Honors Awards portal off of ASAE's main website, but it is also listed here on the screen. You have until May 30th in order to apply for this year's honors. And we really hope that this program today has helped make the process more relatable, more transparent, and that for the other judges that I will be facilitating in my role as chair, that we will have made their jobs a heck of a lot harder this year by getting high quality applicants. So again, I'd like to thank our pa-
I'm going to finish DJ's sentence by saying I want to thank our panel for being here with us. Greatly appreciate your time as well as the time of our audience. And certainly if you want additional information or have more questions, please feel free to use both the link for your application or send an email to HonorsAwards@asaecenter.org. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, ASAE.
Take good care, everybody.
Bye-bye.